Welcome back, everyone, for another panel at A Weekend with Good Friends, an online role-playing convention run by the incredible listeners of the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast. Today, these Titans of Terror will be talking about transforming a hook into a scenario. Before we dive into introductions and discussions, just a couple of quick reminders for everyone watching. This panel is being streamed live and recorded for future viewing on the Weekend with Good Friends YouTube channel. Please feel free to drop any questions in the stream chat as we go, and our lovely producer will give us a heads up in case we miss anything. We also expect everyone to follow our convention's code of conduct, treat each other with kindness and respect. We're all here to enjoy great conversations about the horror and the hobby we love. For today, I'm your moderator, VJ Stonecraft. I'm the executive director of a history museum by day, and by night, I'm a TTRPG writer and AP performer. I'm also a contributing writer for Cthulhu by Gaslight 7e. You can find me on Discord and Blue Sky, where you can follow me into the dark. But you're not here to hear from me or about me, because today I'm joined by our terrific panelists. If you could start us off, Rina.
Well, I'm Rina Haenze. My pronouns are they, them. And I am a podcaster, specifically on the Old Ways podcast, where I'm the head of Mythos Horror, running Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Dark, and Trail of Cthulhu, and also on Ain't Slayed Nobody, and a bunch of other places pop up every now and then. People refer to me as the Inevitable Rina. You can also find my scenarios. There's 10 Call of Cthulhu scenarios on Drive-Thru RPG. So you can find all of my work there. You can find me on the Discord as Maverick of Mayhem or on Blue Sky as Rena.Henze.
And Michael?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I'm Michael Reid. I write some Miskatonic repository called Cthulhu Snares. You can find those on the good old Drive-Thru RPG. I also do some writing reviews and ramblings and whatnot on my blog at MJR RPG. You can also find that on all the social medias and stuff. That's all for me.
Hi, I'm Colin Richards. I'm an artist by trade. I work in the OSR space, so like Goodman Games, Dungeon Crawl Classics, all that kind of fun stuff. I also self-produce some Call of Cthulhu scenarios on Miskatonic Repository. You can check out Signal the Noise or Make a Cup of Die, and a couple more are coming out soon. Yeah, find me Colin Richards art on the places.
Great stuff. And I'm Matt Sanderson. I'm a freelancer for various pretty much horror games across the board, whether it be Call of Cthulhu, Vampire Masquerade, Cult Divinity Lost. If it is horror, that's my bag. I don't really deal with this weird fantasy stuff out there that other people do. But I'm also one of the co-hosts of the Good Friends of Jackson Elias, having been there since day one. That's a long, long time and makes me feel old thinking about when we started that. That I'm sure some of you may have heard of. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
All right, and so we will dive in. Just as a reminder for anybody who maybe hasn't been following the panel chats that we've had going on in the Good Friends server, at the end of this panel, our panelists will attempt to turn a secret hook into a scenario live for you here during the panel. Nobody but I know what the scenario hook will be. And it will be completely in their hands once I throw it to them. And so that's probably what we'll spend the last 20 or so minutes of the panel doing, trying our best to write a good scenario and see what comes of it. So with that in mind and looming over everyone's heads on the panel, try not to think about it. I'm sure it'll be terrific. Where do we begin with a hook? What usually sparks an idea for the hooks that captivate you? Do you start with a monster, an idea, a set piece, something else? What draws you in?
For me, it's frequently a pop culture reference. So, like, my first scenario was Saturday the 14th, which is a slasher homage. And I'd been watching Friday the 13th and went, but what about the day after the massacre and the people who have to come in and clean up and figure out what happened? or Jolene, which is obviously based on the Dolly Parton song because I was walking on the beach and was listening to the song and I went, Jolene is an eldritch horror. What am I gonna do with that? Um, or the phrase "Friends of Dorothy," which is one of my latest scenarios, which is a cultural phrase for a gay man, although it's been used more for queer people as well in general. And so just like these cultural references tend to spark things for me, just this idea of this, but what if? And that's where I tend to pick up my hooks.
I'll go, I guess. I thought that was great. And also, Rena, happy Saturday the 14th, speaking of. So
Yes,
it's very, very
serendipitous
cool.
day.
Very fun scenario. For me, honestly, it's a feeling or a vibe or an emotion. I always find I tend to travel a lot, even just road trips or around my house driving, and I'll see like an old pseudo derelict farmhouse, or I'll see a weird gnarly tree, and just seeing that gives me like an emotion, a feeling of like it's kind of mysterious, it's kind of spooky, kind of eerie, and that's what I want to build off of. I think about what would my players experience during a scenario, how can I get them to that emotional or that vibe, that feeling, and then I build the scenario out from there. That's among other things usually it for me.
Mine's actually a little bit similar to Colin's there, though. It's usually just a location is what gets me to start. Just um, often a very normal place, just sitting in a cafe and wondering if there's a bunch of investigators here, what would make it very uncomfortable to be here? What would make this place weird and strange? A cafe, a library, a church. That's usually just some place I'm in and thinking, how could this be turned into a scenario? What weird thing could happen here? That's usually where mine start from.
I think if you ask 100 different authors that, you're going to get 100 different answers or slight variations upon each one. For me, I try to boil it down to what are the core fundamental building blocks of this scenario? What platform is this thing built on? And that will be what is the key monster or key god if you're looking at it in like a Call of Cthulhu terms, or what's the historical time period if it's set in something that isn't the modern day? Is it a particular time frame that's referenced in the books, whether it be like Gaslight or if it's a Jazz Age one or Classic era, whatever you want to call it, or if it's around a particular place, so something that's happened that is historical to that location. And from there, that provides me with a foundation that pretty much it grows out of that. That's my starting point.
So I think that everyone kind of draws, like you said, their inspiration from many different sources. H.P. Lovecraft drew his from existing works, from his own nightmares. I draw mine from history as a historian. But once you've got that idea that excites you or terrifies you, whatever the case may be, what is the first thing that you do to start expanding it?
It's a good question. Sit in front of a blank white page and just hope for the best as my fingers hover over the keyboard and just wait for something to happen. Yeah, I don't know.
Come up with 3 bullet points. They don't have to be just plot bullet points. They could be the name, like one of them's the names of key NPCs, one of them is an important plot element. One of them is here's the thing that happens in the middle right before we go to break. And then I make 4 pre-gens and then I play test it. And that is how I do things. That's where it goes for me.
Nice.
Yeah, probably the first thing I try and come up with before expanding the thing is what sort of the ticking clock is going to be. I want to know what I'm going to use to stress the players out, and if I can't think of that, I usually then I stare at the blank page until I think of something like that.
I suppose I'm quite a visual storyteller, so I try to think of things very much almost like a film script, almost storyboard things out in my mind. But more so at the beginning, trying to look for what elements neatly fit together, almost like different jigsaw puzzles. Does A fit with B, and can you put them together? and it's looking around for just random disparate things that can seemingly connect, whether thematically or appropriately. Is there some kind of harmony, whether it be on a literary level or even just on in a historical context? Like, for instance, if you're going to set stuff in a nightclub, just pulling stuff randomly out of the air, what kind of stuff happens in a nightclub? Well, you've got seedy drama that happens there. There's probably a crime focus there, so you can do crime drama. So you start throwing out what elements of crime. Is it organized crime? Is it random folks that are completely inept? If you want to go all Elmore Leonard, and just start to build off these little building blocks that slowly start to fit together, almost like jigsaw pieces or jigsaw puzzle pieces or Lego bricks that all just they all click, and at that point I know that I've got something I can work with.
And so, how do you know when you have a hook that you can work with? Because it's one thing to have a good idea, it's another to be able to build it into something that you can expand and grow. How do you know when you have an idea that is strong enough to carry a scenario?
I would say time for me. Like, there comes a point when I'm doing a piece of artwork when I have to like put it in a drawer, walk away from it for a day, and you could come back and kind of look at the mistakes. It's kind of the same thing. I'll just say I'm not going to work on this idea. I'm just going to go about my day. And if a couple days later, a week later, I'm still thinking about it, I'm still puzzling it out, then I'm like, this is something. If I've just completely forgotten about it entirely, then it I don't think it would have made a good scenario at that point. Like I have to feel that passion about it, that excitement.
I suppose mine's going to be similar to Colin, that if it's something that's grabbed me and I've got that idea straight off the bat that, yes, I know I can do X, Y, and Z with it, therefore I know there's enough variety and there's enough to make it a game rather than just a story. Because we're writing games, we're not here to write a railroad driven narrative that only has one direction and one ending it can go to. Because frankly, that's boring for me. That's the worst possible thing that I can think of playing through. I want situations where there are multiple different variations that you can weave your way through this thing. If I've got such a restrictive setting that I'm thinking I can't really do much apart from this with it, then I will probably discard it. But if I've mulled over it for a while and thought, oh, I can do X, Y, Z, and maybe one or two, three other things on there, then I know I'm onto something that I can develop. And there have been plenty of times I've thrown stuff away that I realised doesn't work. So don't be afraid to throw stuff out if you're worried about it.
The excitement's a big part of it. Like if I think of something and the idea comes to me and I'm just like, I can't wait to run this. And then a few days later, I still can't wait to run this. Then that tells me that I've got something worth exploring. And one of the reasons I play test so early before I've even written anything down is to see if it's going to go anywhere. Uh, I've had a couple times where I've tried something and gone, nope, nope, this isn't going to work. I'm going to put it in a drawer and rework it later. I'm still excited about it, but the way it's going in my brain isn't working. But in general, like putting it out in front of people, putting that idea, those concepts, and seeing what happens and seeing, does this have legs? That gives me the idea of, yes, I can write this. Um, and it also gives me the energy boost that I need to actually put the words on the paper because it's very hard to sit down and write something when you don't know if, for me, when I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know what the players are going to do. I have a vision in my head of 3 or 4 different ways, but then I play test it and someone like Scott Dorward comes in and breaks it 16 different ways, that kind of thing. So for me, the play testing it gives me a really strong idea of, can I make this work and is it worth pursuing for me?
Yeah. I was pretty similar to both what Matt said and then a bit of what Rena said as well. But yeah, when I'm putting together the first part, like what the main stressor is, what I'm trying to mess with the players with. So I'm trying to find out if it's not just an interesting idea to me, but if there's a way it'll actually have a way the players can interact with it, that'll be a fun way, and it'll make them interact with each other. Um, more than enough times I've come up with something I think is super cool, then realize the players are just sort of one way directing with it, nothing with each other, nothing really back and forth. So I'll throw it out. Or I think it's great and go to a play test and nope. And then, like Rena says, back in the cupboard of other ideas where it might someday be more useful.
So that's actually a great kind of segue into a question that I actually didn't even think to write down for all of you, which is what is the role of playtesting? You've all kind of talked about it a little bit, but how do you approach it? Rena, you playtest very early. I tend to playtest once I think my scenario is about 85 to 90% there. So what are all of your different approaches to playtesting and why does that work for you?
So
I'll
I
jump in.
play
Oh, go.
test. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, you started first. There's a lag. So
Okay. I play test very early to start off with, like I said, to see where my idea is going and if it has legs. I have what I call a chaos group, which is the people who are going to take things in completely different directions than I might go in expecting. And they really spark my creativity and having to improv things. I'm an improv GM at heart, and having to come up with, okay, so that's not how I thought that was going to go. We are rerouting this, and that might make it into the final part of the scenario. And then after that, I write down an outline based on how that went and based on, all right, I can see four different ways this could go based on what players did. And then I do another play test. And that at that point I have more of a structure. I have everything kind of, okay, these could go a bunch of different ways, but more or less this is how it's the main structure is going to go. And then I write it, and then I do a third play test. And sometimes I'll throw in four or five if people are really wanting to play it because they like the idea or whatever. But I tend to have my core 2 to 3 play tests, that initial one, and then one to follow up based on where I know where things are going. So the first one solidifies my idea, tells me that it's going in a good place, it's in the right direction, and gives me ideas for where I want to take things or how I can lay it out for potential future keepers of based on what your players do, this might happen. Even if this is the main thing that happens, they might do it this way instead. And then the second play test lets me test out my structure and lets me test out those ideas and those plans for how things might work, and then fix the holes in there. And if I get a third play test, then that's also very much just plugging up the holes, filling in the cracks, other things like that. But that's what playtesting does for me, and that's how I use it.
I'll be honest with you, that pretty much sums up basically what I do as well. Like you just run it, improv it, figure out what kind of sticks, what doesn't, what they're gonna maybe do, refine it, do it again, and then yeah, I don't think I've done more than 2 play tests for a scenario yet. Maybe 3 at the most, but I don't want to get in that weird hole where you're just playtesting too much. And yeah, you keep it loose and trust your gut too, to an extent. Like there's some things that I even as you're playtesting, it might be like, it might be a little off or whatever, but if you have an idea you're really, have your heart set on, don't, you might choose to abandon it, but like if you feel that you need to fight for it, then maybe it's worth keeping in, I don't know.
I suppose from my end, it's once I've got the opening hook set, that's the point where I'm happy to bring it to the table. I'll have several bangs which I've got in mind, so several events like milestones along the way to potential conclusions. But even then, I'm not really looking at the having got a conclusion set in mind at this point. So I'm quite happy to see what route the PCs will find to get to whatever conclusion. And if multiple groups find they arrive at the same point, then there's me thinking, oh, that's valid. You're going to have multiple groups that will go for that. That's a valid thing to write up into the final narrative. But yeah, I probably run stuff easily half a dozen times minimum to try and find the common themes that different groups will approach. And it's those if enough groups hit them, then I'm onto something. But yeah, start once I've got hooks and then run multiple times, say at least half a dozen.
I am, yeah, I guess compared to pretty similar to what VJ said right at the beginning, I actually, compared to everyone, it sounds like I like to have things pretty set out when I get into it. Maybe I like to over prepare. I don't know. But I tend to have everything except for like mood writing really in place when I get into a starting. And then, of course, that first play test, like Rena says, breaks most of it. Um, but it at least lets me know what to break. so I can smash it and sort of rebuild around what they did. And that sets it in stone. And then the second, and so on and so forth, playtest let me sort of just fill in the edges, add in more atmosphere, more mood, more tension, all that sort of fun stuff. But I try and get that actual structure done within the first playtest after that, just so I have more to build on afterwards. At least that's what I like.
I learnt the hard way, having done that approach of having written the whole thing up. What I thought was, oh, this is fine. Everyone will find this really helpful. And then that painful moment of, I've just spent like 10,000 words writing this stuff, and I've got to scrap it, nearly all of it. I'm a lazy writer. I do not want to write anything twice. So.
Hey, masochist, I guess. I like to do the rewriting.
Do not. Very, very much. If I don't have to, I won't.
Save a lot of time. Save a lot of time.
So I've actually got kind of a real world application scenario for you that totally has nothing to do with my own playtest that I'm currently doing for a scenario that I'm writing at all. But I have two groups that I'm running the same scenario for concurrently, and both groups have chosen completely different approaches to the material. So thematically, they're interested in different things. The approach that they're taking is very different. The parts of the hook that are interesting to them are, night and day. Without any more context, what would that tell you about the scenario? If you're playtesting something, you've had two groups, entirely different approaches to the material you've written, and entirely different experiences with it.
Are both groups enjoying what they're doing, even though they're diametrically opposed to one another?
They tell me so. So I would like to think so. Yes.
It sounds like you got a good hook and a good scenario. If people can enjoy it multiple ways, like that's awesome, you know?
If you can have a scenario that attracts wildly different groups of wildly different, again, in Cthulhu terms, investigator groups, then you're onto a winner, because it's not a single restrictive, no, you must be this type of investigator, no, you must be this part of this group. If you've got multiple groups, that's a winner for me. That's exactly the kind of thing I want to see and what I want to play and what I want to run. Because it means that as a GM, you're not going to get bored when it's, oh great, my next load of academics turn up in the car on the way to a conference. Yeah.
And you don't want something that runs the same way every single time, because that's no fun for you as the keeper. And then you end up, if you publish your scenario, then people only want to run it once or twice because it's the exact same thing every time.
Can you think of any examples of scenarios that you think are, not only have that strong hook, but that are wonderful for replaying? When I think of scenarios with great replay value, the first one that comes to mind for me is Missed Dues. That's one that I've run at least a dozen times and has been vastly different for each run. Are there any scenarios that come to mind for you that are like, oh, this is not only a great hook, but is also just beautifully or elegantly written?
This was the question I had the most trouble. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rina. Go ahead.
My go-to is the Necropolis when I'm not running my own stuff, because even though it is your locked room kind of scenario, it's the hook is really strong. You get people into a situation, and they're going to be stuck in things, and they can't go wander off on other tangents. So it's great for like a convention or for teaching new people how to play Call of Cthulhu, which is its purpose. You can run it in 1 hour, allegedly. You can run it in 4, which is it tends to be 3 to 4 for me because I flesh things out. But it's the way the groups approach it tend to differ. There's some things that are very similar in how they approach it. But like I had one group where someone decided to lick the Ankh. Like he just decided to lick it. I I don't know why. His motives are still mysterious to me. But it was one of those kind of random things that happens. Like people will do random things with different stuff in the treasure room. They'll go looking for stuff. Some of them will try to take paint scrapings of the mural. Some of them go looking for the chamber. Some of them don't. Like all these different things. So even though it's not a big sprawling sandboxy like world building kind of scenario, for me it is a well-paced, very tense scenario that allows with a great hook that allows for a variety of gameplay from new players. I've run it for brand new people who've never played an RPG before, all the way up to people who've been playing this for decades. And it's always a different experience and it's always fun. So for me, when I'm not running my own things, the Necropolis is my go-to.
Licking the Ankh has definitely got to be a Dorwood move. Can't be anyone else.
It wasn't, I know.
Yeah,
As,
that's
as soon
amazing.
as the player said, I like the Ankh, I first pulled an, "Are you sure?" And then I went, "Have you been listening to Scott Dorward play games? Because that's what this feels like right now."
I'm gonna say the best scenarios are the ones where they tell you what to do if someone for some reason tries to eat the scary, awful thing. Weird how much that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So my go-to is going to be it's an old one, well, comparatively old, the Burning Stars, which is from Terrace from Beyond. Uh, it's got on a surface level quite a cliched opening that, hey, you wake up in this place and you don't remember quite, you remember who you are, but you don't know where you are, you don't know how you got here, and it's quite a let's say well done structure of retracing your steps and trying to work out exactly what's brought you to this place. But it's got enough variety in it where, again, there's not a single route that you can take through this. There's multiple different places folks can go to, different threads of investigation, ultimately leading to a point where there is this brilliant WTF moment that I live for in gaming. And that's why I'll always go back to it, because I love the reaction when people suddenly get that twist in that scenario, which I won't spoil in case anyone's not played it, but my God, it's worth it.
Made me think of Forget Me Not a little bit. I've only run it the once, but it makes me want to do it more just for the beginning. Very confusing what the fuckness, but more that's not the one I was going to bring up because I don't actually rerun scenarios that often. There's too many scenarios. I want to run them all, except one that Colin played in. I actually run very often called Three Requests. Yeah, I really like just how the initial bit of it is set up. It's just you go to this old house, sort of mansion, and the old recluse there has called you to help him out for a job. Very boring, normal start. We get there, and then there's a little piece of paper on the door with this three very weird requests on it, asking you to do a thing. And I just love how players sort of look at it and like, what? It's like, go find the dog, don't open the door, and lock me in a room. What? Why? And it's just very fun watching them figure out what each of those mean, and then just piecing together all the weirdness going on. It's a very fun little scenario.
Real quick aside, Michael, at a recent con, I ran into one of the other players from that game.
Oh yeah.
He's like, "Do you remember that game we played in Japanese with the requests?" We talked all about it. It was great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, very good time, man. Very good time. Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for this. I cannot think of things. There's so many great scenarios out there. I don't think it's a great scenario, but the old Chaosium, Beyond the Mountains of Madness has a great twist in it, which I love. I don't think the beginning's super strong, but just the hook of like, you have to go find a missing Antarctic expedition and madness ensues is always a classic for me. There's so much you can do with stuff like that. So
You can always tell who's played that because you say the word pemmican and you just see them shudder.
yes, yep.
Or stock taking.
The horror, the horror.
So let's say that you've got that hook and you're sitting down at your computer and you're staring at that blank screen and the words aren't flowing, the ideas aren't coming. What do you use to break out of writer's block or to kind of kick that flow of words into gear? Are there certain things that you use? Personally, I use Miro website for mind mapping to try and get my thoughts out of a jumble, but what do you use?
I have a weird answer. I get in the
Good.
car. I get in this isn't going to work for everybody. I get in the car with my wife and we drive for like 2 hours and we just discuss it as we drive around. And it really helps. Or, it doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be a friend or somebody or even online, but just like talking it out with no expectation of sitting and writing it and just like hashing out what do you love about it, what gets you excited, what scene, like that kind of stuff, and just um Yeah, that works for me. And then by the time I'm done, I'm amped, excited. I want to write something, and then that gets the ball rolling.
Love that. Just I don't know if my wife would appreciate me just grabbing her and putting her in the car and saying,
Get
I
in the
need to talk.
car.
I need to talk about my scenario.
We're talking about monsters for 2 hours. Get in the car.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Um, just a all I if I can't figure something out, I like to just get a piece of paper and draw like one of those little bubble maps, and that usually very simple, but that tends to get me going. Or again, knowing that this isn't going to work and throwing it away. But I'm gonna have to try Colin's suggestion here sometime. It sounds like it might work.
Similar to Colin, although I don't use my spouse because he hates horror. I have a brainstorming partner, my friend James Bennell, who also does a lot of the art for my scenarios. So it's really helpful having him as a brainstorming partner because then he just goes off and arts things for me. And then that really helps me visualize things as well. But I'll send him a message on Discord about, hey, I'm working on this thing. I'm stuck on it. What do you think? And we'll swap ideas back and forth. And a lot of them don't work, but we find things that do stick. And then I'll work them in there. And just having that place to spill out my ideas and get them out of my head so I'm not just thinking about them in circles is really helpful. But also having somebody who also writes scenarios and who does art for scenarios who can visualize things and bounce ideas back to me like, well, this is really great. Have you considered adding this element? And then when I'm done with that, I have sticky notes and I have a wall. And so I put my sticky notes on the wall. And so like the things that are really important and cannot be moved. So you have to have this moment, this climax, whatever, or NPCs who you need to meet go in certain places. And then I have my movable ones where floating clues that can go here, or NPCs that can show up here or here. And I'll have little lines between them pointing with arrows. And that kind of visualization works for me. The technology side of things doesn't work so much for me, but that visual kind of mapping it out on sticky notes the way I did in grad school for my thesis is very helpful. So that combination is what helps break the writer's block for me.
Yeah, so similar to Rena, then, that I'm not a very tech savvy person. I certainly don't know multiple programs beyond the likes of Notepad, Word, and this weird physical thing they call a book that I tend to write in with this pen thing. So yeah, I just write things down. It comes to a point where if the words aren't flowing, I'll sit back and listen to music for a while, or go pester the wife if she feels like she's gonna be helpful. Or hell, even talk with the birds and see if they react to anything that I say. So just throw enough stuff at people to get any kind of reaction, and so there you go. There's a light bulb that comes on.
So, in my panel yesterday, we talked pretty extensively about ambiguity versus clarity and kind of balancing both of these things in writing scenarios. So, in your experience, how do you decide how much of that original idea or hook needs to be explained versus how much needs to be left mysterious or open to interpretation?
Okay, I'll go again. I think that would depend on the scenario. If you're writing something that's like a fair play mystery where everything can be solved, like who is the wizard? Why did he summon the thing? And blah, blah, blah. Then, yeah, have all those answers available for them to get. But if you're trying to go for something closer to like the vibe of a cosmic horror, it may be just leave it blank because that's part of the terror or the experience. The unknowing is baked into the DNA of the scenario, kind of a thing.
I think it depends really, like Colin was saying, on the type of scenario you're writing. And it's like it'll vary from writer to writer as well. Like what are the tropes you're playing with? What are the ideas you're playing with? Like Saturday the 14th is a slasher, and you're not getting a bunch of explanations. You'll get something. but you're not going to get why is Jason suddenly in space? Like, how does this make any sense kind of thing. Like you might get some hints at ideas that might be the truth, but you're not going to get the whole this is how this happened and this is why we're in this place and this is how Jason can go from this spot to this spot in 30 seconds, all that kind of thing. You're not going to get all of that. But I think it also depends on what are the things your players absolutely need to know. Like you want to think of those things that in order to feel like they've not solved, unless it's solving the mystery, and like Colin was saying, the investigative one, what are the things they need to feel like they've done something? So it can just be learning little bits about who this entity is, even if you don't know everything about them, just a little bit about who they might be or what they're doing here. It could be an entire mystery that they need to solve, but figuring out those key elements of what do they need to know to feel like they've done something, or to feel like they've been involved in the investigation, the mystery, the story, the whatever, and then you can have other elements that they can learn, but they don't have to learn. So if they don't get to that place in the library, if they don't figure out how to read this tome, that's okay. It's not going to take away from their enjoyment of the scenario. Because you want to learn a little bit. You want to know a little bit of something at least about what you're facing, what you're dealing with. So for me, that's how I approach it. What do they absolutely need to know about this story, about this entity, about this plot? And what are the things that they don't? What are the things that maybe they can learn? But don't have to learn. And that's how I approach structuring those things.
I suppose on my side, it comes down to consistent narrative that allows a keeper GM, insert terminology here, that can then riff off the material if the player group takes stuff in a completely unexpected direction that the scenario doesn't necessarily accommodate for. Because if you have that framework in place and you've got the stuff that explains why folks are doing what they're doing, what is happening at particular locations, then it allows the keeper to improvise. If you send them in with a half-baked idea or stuff that has so many holes in that's just left vague and mysterious, then me as a GM, if I'm left with that, I'm kind of going, well, God damn it, give me something that I can react with if they go off and do their own thing at the place that isn't mentioned. So yeah, it's for me, it's providing that consistent background. The stuff that I'm more likely to put as vague is the stuff that doesn't necessarily relate to the core of the scenario itself. So that's where I'd normally put in the line of, and if the PCs want to go off in this direction, GM, feel free to make up whatever shit you want here and make it very explicit to them that you're on your own if they go this way. Because the story I've written is over here. But if they want to go that way, knock yourself out and create your own thing.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add on to that. Mostly, I try and only include sort of background information or ideas that are part of the original pitch if I think it'll actually affect play, I guess. If it's something that won't have an effect on like the player's decision making or helping the GM, obviously. If it's just extra background stuff, I tend to remove it just if I don't think it's actually going to be actionable. I of course want to put all my stuff in there because I like what I write, but I try and cut out as much as I can still if it's not going to be useful.
So that leads me into another question. When you're dealing with, existential dread, the mythos, cosmic stuff, do you, as the writer, have all of the answers, even if you don't intend the keeper or the players to have all of the answers? Do you know what's going on as the original writer? Or do you keep some
Not
ambiguity for yourself as well?
sometimes. It depends on the kind of game that I'm writing, like which genre of horror I'm going for. And it also depends on what I learn about the entity or the situation as I'm writing it, because I'm figuring it out as I go along as well. And sometimes it reveals itself to me. Like I have a pretty solid idea of what's happening in Saturday the 14th. But Jolene, like there's a bunch of things I still don't know about her. And I am fine with that because she is a horrible, terrifying, unknowable entity. I know a little bit about why she's here and why she's doing it, but like I like the idea of also not knowing everything as the writer. Like I really like not having a complete utter picture of what's happening or why. It means I explore things more when I run it as well. Like I learn things as I run multiple times. It keeps it fresh as well. So that's my perspective.
I'm way at the other end of the bell curve on that one. I like to know everything, and I like to have, as pretty much see previous answer, that I like to have that comprehensive description so people can bounce off anything if they go in wild directions that I've not accommodated. So having that solid, comprehensive view allows me to do that. If I've got not say a scenario with lots of holes in it, but elements where it's just, oh, I hadn't thought about that and not defined it, that leaves me a bit frustrated. So no, I'm very much at the way at the other end of the curve.
I'll go. Yeah, you know what? I'll jump on the arena train here with that. I agree. I don't like to have, I don't want to know. And I like when I'm playing a game when if an entity is mysterious and players are coming up with their own ideas about what's happening, I'm like, well, that's great. This is our table, and what you guys saying, that's truth. So I think that can lead to players having more fun, make them feel smart. Oh yeah, it is. Of course, it's Nyarlathotep this time. You guys, you got it. Bingo. Um, but I know, like for instance, when I wrote Omega Kappa Die, which is about a fraternity and a ancient being is stuck in their house, like that doesn't need to be defined because the scenario is not really about this ancient being. It's about the wacky antics the players are going to get up to and that feeling of just having fun and drinking at the table. So at the end of the day, it's like who cares? This is what the scenario is about. Isn't the answers that I could provide. So yeah,
Makes sense. I throw myself right in the middle probably. Give I try and give enough background at least to the human antagonist. So obviously, I want everyone to know what they're up to. But spooky monsters or whatever. Usually, like I don't need to put everything about their origin unless or their antics or what they're wanting to do, unless it's well, something that the players can actually act upon rather than just know and say, oh, I know it now. If it's something that can affect their play, yeah, I'd love to add all that in. But yeah, keep it mysterious because I also don't know what I'm doing either. So don't write that part.
For me, it's less than not knowing who the
Mm,
entity is or anything. Like I have some ideas, like I know uh, one of the reasons why Jolene is doing what she does. Why does she
mm,
steal people's romantic partners and then disappear? What happens there? Like I know more or
mm,
less why she's doing that. I don't know where she comes from, and I don't know like the details of all the places that she's been and all the people that she's taken that she's been with, whatever. Like just as an example. So the things that are important to the scenario that
mm,
they need to know about who she is and why they've been affected by her personally. I know those things. I write those things into the scenario so the GM doesn't feel lost. But there's still that idea of she is still unknowable and I can't completely know her motivations completely because she's not human, and all the things that she's done. I don't have a detailed history of Jolene,
mm.
throughout recorded history kind of thing in my head. So
Now, we've talked a little bit about playtesting and different approaches, whether you do it very early, whether you do it later in the writing process. How do you approach writing or rewriting when a playtest or even just the process of putting pen to paper completely changes where you thought it would lead? So it takes you in a completely different direction, maybe thematically, story-wise, character-wise, whatever the case may be. How do you deal with that in the writing process when where you end up is not where you started?
I would say for me, I don't think I mean I haven't written a ton of scenarios or anything, but like of the things that I have written, or even just personal games cooked up for home groups or whatever, uh, if I come up with an idea, it often ends up going to a different place. So that it ends up kind of being like that's part of the process is coming up with that kind of hook and starting and thinking, oh, we might go here if we go way over here, and it's like, oh, well, that's okay. You just do that. You know, it's just kind of part of the writing process, I guess.
Yeah, like if it takes you off in a completely other direction, that's fine, that's cool, awesome. But sometimes if it goes off in a completely like if I liked my original idea, but I for some reason broke off from it, I mean, just I'd write down the original intention somewhere else, throw that in the long list of workshop ideas, and maybe that'll be its own thing someday. Maybe it'll work its way back in. But yeah, if anything, I just got two hooks for the price of one. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm similar to Michael. Then it would be if it's veered off so wildly that it seems like something completely different, then hell, run with it. But it's very much that thing now. It's not the original thing that I had in mind. Keep that original thing, put it on the back burner, and maybe go back to it a year or so down the line, or however long you feel until you got something that you can generate from it again that maybe is again completely different from the thing that you've just done. But yeah, don't be afraid to let things go in their own direction. Stories evolve in many weird and wonderful ways.
Stories are living things. They have minds of their own in cases, and I think that's especially true with games, because you run them with other people, and you're never going to get the exact same story twice. But running them with people, they're going to take things in different directions. The story is going to continue to evolve, even beyond that. It's going to continue to live. And if you run it a couple times and it goes in completely off the rails from where you were originally planning it, that's where the story wants to go. And it's a disservice to the original story and to the new story to kind of push it into a little box and say, no, you must be here. It won't be fun for you to write. It won't be fun for people to play. It just won't be an enjoyable experience all the way around. So I've learned, like, I got frustrated the first time it happened to me because like I had such a clear idea of this is what I want. It is my baby. I got very frustrated with it, and then I realized that I wasn't going to be having fun with it if I tried to force it. And so I just accepted the new idea and ran with it. And it turned out to be a lot more fun than the original plan that I had. And then I went with the original concept a little bit later into something else, and it turned out even better. And so, like, as Michael was saying, two for the price of one, right? But it's just thinking of stories as these living entities of their own that take on shape based on what they want to do, but also what players do, has been a really helpful mindset for me in keeping things from being forced into where I want them to go, and also being free to let go of the original idea when it's just not going in that direction.
Rena, you just generated a hook for me. I want to write a scenario about a living story that like wants to get out or something now. So thank you for that. That's going to be on my head now.
You're welcome.
I agree with everything you said though. I think that's a really good point. But living story.
So we've all probably heard the phrase before, kill your darlings. I think it's even been evoked in this conversation already once or twice. So when the hook is strong, but the scenario just isn't clicking, you can't figure out how to put the pieces together. You put it into, your TBD pile. Have you ever just completely abandoned a scenario that you still feel today passionately about, that you still think about? For me, I keep a graveyard document of all of the ideas that I have abandoned that I can kind of pluck out and throw at things, whether I'm writing or running. But do you have a favorite abandoned concept or scenario hook that you are still thinking about?
Nothing abandoned. Like everything that I'm still thinking about is like I'd like to get to it at some point. It's just maybe not right now, if that makes sense. Are you looking for examples or do you just in general?
Either one. I think it can be really helpful to actually have like a more tangible example, like, not, I won't actually use the hook we're going to use later as the example. That would be a bad idea. But, you've got a good hook, a living story, and it has a mind of its own, right?
Mm,
But maybe you just can't figure out how to make that work, but you still are thinking about it. Are
mm.
there these stories kind of have a life of their own. They live beyond the original life cycle. You've put it in a drawer, you're going to come back to it later. But, are maybe a better, more practical application of this question would be, have you ever abandoned a scenario or put it into the drawer for later and then come back to it and revived it? And do you have an example of what that scenario was?
Yeah, if I can take that. Yeah. Um, yeah, whenever I abandon a hook, which happens often, I, like you said, put it in the graveyard, or I just have a list of working ideas. Ones that do succeed, I still leave them in there. And ones that fail, I let them lie with the others. But yeah, like I like to put them in there, and then sometimes as I'm writing one scenario or using one hook, I'll see another one that looks like it might slot in, even one that's died before, so they can end up sort of merging into one. Um, one of the little, I wrote a handful of little tiny short scenarios, and they had a whole list of a couple dozen ideas, and many of them didn't work. But uh, there were two. One was I wanted to write something about like a drug that you could take that would send you into the I'm forgetting what it was called. What was the Lovecraft story about the like you go to the beyond, from beyond, that's the movie.
Oh,
The movie was From Beyond, based on
From
the
Beyond. Okay.
the story. I wanted it to be like a drug that would sort of open you up to that, and then also pull in things from beyond as well. But I couldn't think of a way to make that into an actual fun scenario, so threw it aside. Then I wanted another one about a group of friends that go up into a little secluded wilderness park, and had to deal with some mythosy inspired wildlife that wouldn't actually threaten them directly, but would sort of push them to deal with each other in their own little interpersonal issues. And then I realized that could throw those together, and one of the characters would be an ex-addict, and also they would come across someone already using the drug. And then also thought, well, why not? What if that drug got out and some actual human wildlife, not human wildlife, earth wildlife consumed it? So then had a bear tripping on some from beyond stuff. So they were seeing these creatures from beyond that the players couldn't see. But it just, yeah, it came together, and it's nice to see a hook that I had thrown away to sort of slip back into it, into a new one.
I've never thrown away a hook or a story idea. I have put them aside to come back for later when I'm in the right headspace, or when it's a better time. Like Friends of Dorothy, my LGBTQ scenario set in the 1980s, was just, it wasn't the right time because I couldn't figure out how to make it work. I had the idea, these LGBTQ military service members in a queer bar in 1981. But I couldn't figure out where to go with it. I had no idea like how to make this hook work. And so I put it aside for about 6 months and processed some things. And then I came back to it with the immediate understanding of, oh, this is exactly where that's going. Like I picked up the Word document, like metaphorically, looked at it and went, oh, I know what's happening here. But it took that 6 months of percolating to actually get there. Like I wasn't actively thinking about it, but it was working away in the back of my mind. And then various things that happened in those 6 months kind of fed into where this is going to go, and the metaphors and everything that end up happening with it. Um, but sometimes just putting it aside for a while and not thinking about it will let the back of your brain, your subconscious, be ruminating and figuring out where the holes are or why it's not working. And sometimes it'll say, nope, this is bad. We don't want this anymore. But sometimes it'll give you something really good. You just have to not actively think about it for a while, because actively thinking on it is going to hurt your brain.
Yeah, it's riffing on what everyone else has said. I think abandoned is a very final word. I don't think anything I've really thrown away, apart from maybe one single scenario that I can think of that I've truly, completely forgotten about, which even now, because I've almost completely forgotten about it, I don't remember too many of the details of, because it was apparently that good and that captivating. that I was trying to write for a convention. I think this was either contingency, not contingency, Indicon or Conception way back in the day. Trying to think, I need a Cthulhu scenario to put in my roster for this year. I want to do a scenario set around a house, maybe something with a kind of Harlequin imagery. And I just ran out of time. I couldn't get enough ideas together. The scenario didn't come together, and that just got put way on the back burner to the point where it probably fell off the last back burner and just fell behind the oven at that point. So yeah, that's the only one I can think of that I've abandoned. But other ones that I think one that hopefully after probably nearly 10 years I'm probably coming back to was one that I was quite happy with. Because way back in the day, I used to write pre-gens for a lot of my scenarios rather than rely on the players to bring their characters to the scenario, because I wrote lots of hooks into their backgrounds. And one particular character in this particular scenario I'm thinking of effectively had not quite a sword of Damocles hanging over them, but they had a hook that I could yank on and get to try to manipulate them to do certain actions. And one player didn't exactly take offense to it, but was really found that destroyed their enjoyment of the scenario. And that threw up an enormous red flag to me, going, well, if that one person has had that adverse reaction to it, there's the chance that other people could do as well. So therefore, I've got to kill that angle of the scenario entirely and think of something that can fill that void. And I just haven't got round to thinking what that might be yet. And that's maybe 10 years later. But it's one that I'm determined to make work at some point. So that will hopefully work its way forward to the front of the queue eventually.
I know for me, I was writing a scenario called an autopsy in Arkham, where it's like an autopsy as an eldritch investigation sort of a thing. And I could not come up with the ending for this, so I put it aside, wrote another scenario. In the meantime, published that, and that gave me the time, just like you guys have all said, of like letting your brain kind of batch process on the background and coming back at it. It's got now the ending's feeling a lot better, and I'm happy with that. And I'm going to be writing that, which is good. And then the other one that I still think I'm going to do something with, but I don't know what yet, is I know Call of Cthulhu, for instance, has a great grand history of beautiful handouts they use. And I like to think of in kind of a meta context, like using a RPG actual play video as a handout of some kind, as in maybe it's like a cursed actual play or something like that you can get video clips of, and do something with that. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. I guess that's it.
It's the actual play where the scenario was so horrible, all the players ended up murdering the GM at the table.
Yeah, it is. They flew across the various parts of the country just to kill him because it's so bad.
All right, so I have just a couple of questions left before we'll move into the audience questions and then the secret hook scenario. So just to kind of wrap up my portion of the questions, you've given a tremendous amount of very good practical advice to our audience about hooks and scenarios and the like. But what advice would you give to someone who has a great idea, but doesn't have the experience that all of you have in building a scenario? What is the advice that you have for folks like that?
Easy. Read lots of scenarios, see how other people put them together. You may have played a load of games, but read the actual text that people have put together. So particularly if you've played something and it's a published adventure, go and read what the author did, and then take some inspiration from how they've laid it out, how their structure of their narrative works. Is there a particularly running style guide that they use if it's for a particular publisher? And yeah, literally just consume, consume, consume.
And also, when you sit down to write your first scenario, try to figure it out. Go with something you really desperately want to write, but also would love to play. A lot of people that I've talked to go into their first scenario thinking about what's going to sell, what are the most popular monsters or eldritch creatures or whatever, like what are things that are going to align with what they've heard on popular APs or whatever. Like, you're not going to enjoy that part of the process. Like, I did my research and so on when I first started writing scenarios. I'd read a lot of scenarios. I'd played a lot of scenarios, like Matt was saying. Like, I did the research, but when it came down to it, I wrote Saturday the 14th in a month, like start to finish play tests and everything, because it was something I really, really wanted to write because I love slashers, like absolutely love them. They're a big part of my personality. But also it was a game I wanted to play. I wanted this idea of what happens when you're the CSI team coming in the day after a slasher movie. Like I would love to play that game, like that kind of concept. And so it made the approaching this scenario text itself a lot less daunting because I was enjoying it. Yeah, I had to do all the technical stuff, and it took me some time to figure things out, and I had to do a good bit of like finagling to get everything to work properly. But when it came down to it, loving what I was writing and wanting to play it myself and approaching it from those two perspectives made it so much less daunting for me. It made it an enjoyable process to the point where I sat for 17 hours and wrote the entire draft out in one go. Hyper focus for the win. But like, not saying that's what you should do. Hydrate, folks. But in general, just you need to love it and you need to think about, would I want to play this? And that will ease your approach into writing a scenario.
Adding on the back of that, if you're coming to RPG writing thinking you're going to make money out of it, haha,
Yes.
you're in the wrong game.
I've had people do market analysis on the scenarios that sell best and all that stuff, and then they've talked about going into writing like this kind of scenario. Like you're going into it with the wrong mindset, folks. It's for fun. You're not going to make a lot of money off of it, but also if you're just thinking about it from a market perspective, you're not going to have a good time and you're going to churn out something that people are not going to enjoy playing because it's just aimed at being a bestseller.
Yet there's probably a role as a Hollywood executive out there somewhere for people like you.
I agree completely with both of you. Make peace with a pauper's grave before you get into this. But I mean, like, I I didn't go to school to learn how to write. I'm no expert or I just like wrote something, and I think that's the maybe the best first advice, like, or not the best, but like that I can give is just sit down and write and figure like put something on the page and then play test, talk to people. Don't be afraid to get feedback. Don't get upset if people are like, this isn't very good. Ask them, well, why? What would you change? What would you do? And then take their advice or, you know, join up. I know in a ton of Discord servers, there's like writing groups, creativity things, people that'll read your stuff, bounce ideas off of. And don't be embarrassed if it's your first scenario. Like everybody has a first scenario or first anything. So just own that and get into it and have fun. You know?
Yeah. All the good answers are all there already. My pithy answer would be to listen to the Good Friends of Jackson Elias episode on scenario structure, episode 212, because it's a good one. And then otherwise,
then.
I guess to just add on to the end of Matt's thing about read a bunch, run a bunch, and find a couple scenarios you like, and then at least to start with, shamelessly copy their structure and pin your own ideas onto it. And as you're writing it, it'll eventually morph into its own thing. It won't stay the same, except for all the scenarios that are just the haunting. But usually if you start putting your own ideas onto it, it'll eventually change into something. But starting with something you already like and adding what you like onto it should, at least for me, usually changes it into something that you like even more.
So my last question that I have planned before we'll answer a couple of the audience questions is, what is the favorite hook you have ever read? What hook do you wish you had come up with yourself, and what made it so enticing or delicious?
My immediate answer to that one is the space between. Scott's scenario, Space Between, which is this kind of Scientology pastiche but with making movies and really horrible things happening. And it's just like I've run it a couple times. I've listened to the AP of it over on How We Roll multiple times. It's just so good and it grips me immediately. And the only reason I don't run it more is because it usually takes 2 sessions and ain't nobody got time for that. But it's so good and it grips me immediately. Just hearing the first episode, that's how I discovered it. I was just like, wow, this is good. I love this. And it's just, I love that scenario so much. Go read it, people.
I suppose for me, it's going to be the one I've already mentioned previously, The Burning Stars by David Conyers in Terrace from Beyond, just because of that WTF moment. That is such a unique idea that I've not seen done in any other scenario, and it's such a memorable moment that I wish I'd come up with that myself. But to add some variety, another one that I feel has got quite a nice moment from when I played it is the titular scenario from Sacraments of Evil, the Gaslight Collection, because that again has an absolutely wonderful reveal when you work out what's going on. That penny drop moment is, oh, you can just that though you can see the ripple go around the table going, oh, we really got something bad going on here. So I just love that reaction when you get the players have that moment of, oh crap. I just live for those moments.
Um, Mine is it's going to be massive spoilers, but not me play it anyway, so it's fine. There's a scenario called "Does God Dream of Digital Drugs" by Byoshin. It's a Japanese scenario, but I translated it so you can buy it if you want. Shameless plug. But I I like it mostly because, as I think of PJ said, I wish I had written it because I just in the back the like everyone's chasing after what they think is some dastardly evil plan, and eventually they find out. Spoilers: there is no actual antagonist. There's just like sort of a random accident, and all these forces they think are against them is just like bureaucratic inertia. And there are cultists, but they're actually like completely correct, and they're trying to help stop what's happening. And I just love that idea and wish I could have stolen it, but I can't steal it anymore because it's out there now. That's mine.
Nice. Ooh, this is a hard question for me. I recently read the Delta Green, it's like a campaign, but Iconoclasts. And the beginning of that has a very intense but very great hook where you're members of ISIL in I can't remember where, and the way it transitions from those people into like the video they're shooting to the Delta Green agents. I think that's just a great hook, and like that really. Uh, I don't know about the rest of the scenario, but after that, I was like, that's a great idea of to like hook somebody involved is show them the terrible thing that's happening as they play through it and then switch to other people that have to stop that thing. So I dig it. That's all I had to say.
I wasn't sure if anybody else was going to jump in, so I apologize for that. So we'll move to a couple of questions from the audience that are solicited from the chat. If I have your screen name, I'll give you credit for it. I apologize if I don't have that in advance. So we have one person who asked, how do you go about planning? I assume in this case maybe a campaign or like a 2 or 3 shot. When you have two otherwise unrelated scenarios or hooks, how do you link them together?
That's easy. I don't.
Yeah, I've never tried it.
If I'm running two very different scenarios and they don't mesh, then I don't try to make them mesh. That's the simple answer from me.
I would think that it would have to depend on the investigators, like if they're part of like Delta Green, or if you're on the haunting, and then the next scenario, it's like you guys are now the paranormal investigation squad, or find some kind of linking, connecting thing between the characters, and then the adventures can be different, like the Scooby-Doo gang or something, every adventure is a little different, but they have a thing they're going for.
Another, oh, Sorry, Rina, were you going to answer?
Oh,
Okay.
I've never done it, so
Pretty much same here. I'm not sure how you would go about doing it. I don't know.
Another question that we have from the audience, I'm going to try to parse this together. I think this is from Khalil. What is the trickiest part about getting your hook from paper to the table? Is this a conceptual process? Are there certain rule sets or systems that you find are easier to work with?
I would think every rule set's going to have its own challenges, so to speak. Um, I guess, I guess honestly, I know with like Call of Cthulhu, I feel like it's a robust enough system that you could run almost anything you want in that system. And so for me, it's just a preferred one. But it might also be the vibes. Like if you're going for something that's completely out there and weird, that you want to have a bunch of random tables or event, maybe run it in like a Morkborg or a Borg system. I would say so. Whatever you're passionate about, I would say go with that.
yeah, I think I tend to run things mostly in either Call of Cthulhu or Cthulhu Dark. Those are my two main systems. So when I'm approaching a scenario, I think about uh, is this going to be a do I want this to be very ordinary people without a lot of specialized skills? Do I want there to be more like less chance of combat, so on? I'm going to put it in Cthulhu Dark. Sometimes I've tested things in both systems to see what works better. There are some scenarios I have that could be run in either of those systems. But I tend to think about from my hook's perspective, is there going to be combat, or do I want there to be the potential for combat? Slasher game? Yes. Call of Cthulhu. Not going to work in Cthulhu Dark. You have to fight the mythos, kind of thing. But can there be less combat and more focus on the investigation and the people being completely ordinary and normal? And they don't have to have a bunch of specialized skills. Maybe I'll put them into Cthulhu Dark. We'll see. So that's how I tend to think about it.
I suppose the main hurdle for me, well, I say hurdle, the main challenge, perhaps be the better term, is remembering that it's a game I'm writing. If I can come up with stories, no problem. But again, they're very linear. Always constantly thinking of how can I make this a game? How can this have the variety of different groups getting different things out of it? And that's the key challenge for me when I come up with plenty of hooks, is remembering that core thing. I don't want this to be a single A leads to B leads to C leads to D, and it's always going to be in that order on that train track. No, yeah. Remember options for PCs and having fun with it as a game, not a story.
Yeah, very similar to what was just said. I don't know. As I'm getting the original idea for a scenario and first putting it down, I'm not really thinking about the rule set too much. It's usually just here's the situation. How could the players interact with the situation, but just like a very base idea of interacting, not exactly what they're going to roll or how the maths are going to work out. Just a much more basic situation idea. And as the others said, like at least for Call of Cthulhu scenarios, you can more or less change it to other horror settings or other horror rule sets pretty easily. It's not that hard just to strip out all the roll X to roll Y or don't roll at all. It's it's easy enough to strip out most of the rules from these sort of games for the most part. So I don't worry about it too much.
So another question that we have got from our audience, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can expand our answers, is do you ever worry that your hook isn't engaging enough? How do you know the idea that's in your head will work? How do you add substance?
Yeah, if they're asking if I'm worried about when I write something if it's going to be good or not, yeah, all the time. Even right now in the back of my head, that's what's churning in there. Am I just a joke? No, it's just one of those things you kind of have to make peace with it. Like, um, if you're always just afraid of what people are going to think, or it's not going to work, or this or that, you're never going to get it done. So sometimes you have to get out of your own way, just get stuff on the page, write it out, play test it, see what works, and maybe it doesn't, in which case you've learned something valuable and you just move on to the next thing, or take what you can from it, you know.
To steal Rena's answer from earlier, if you're writing it and it feels like something you'd want to play, that's usually the first step. If you're writing and say, I don't know if I'd want to play this, then maybe you've got a problem to get over right away. But I know if it seems like something you're wanting to play, and then of course you do a play test and people enjoy it, I think you're on the right track usually, probably.
One thing I do is I schedule a play test for about 3 or 4 weeks out from when I'm scheduling it. So then if people sign up for it, that means they're excited about my hook. They want to play that, and it gives me a boost of confidence in the time leading up to that play test. Is, oh, people are interested in this. That means I've got legs, or at least half a leg, to start on this scenario. So we'll see how it goes in the playtest. We'll see if people enjoy it. But the very fact that people have signed up for it and I have enough people to run it means it's a start.
Yeah, similar to Rina in that respect, that I can put playtest groups together that some of them, they don't care what it is they're playing, they just want to play games. So they're not as helpful on that side of things, because I can have anything I throw at them and they'll play it. So when I go along to conventions, I do often play test scenarios there as well. So if I put a sign up sheet up on the board, thinking of something like contingency, for example, which is where I do a lot of my kind of meat space play testing, that if I have a whole list of people that come up there and throw their names, that there's a waiting list of like half a dozen people that want to get on this thing when the first 6 slots have gone, then congrats, I know I've got an idea that interests people. But if I've only got maybe 2 or 3 out of 6 that sign up, then I know I've got something that needs some work on. So yeah, just don't be afraid to go out there and use convention spaces as a good way to play test, because then you will see what groups that you've had no experience with potentially, how they react to the pitch that you put up on the board, and yeah, see what happens, see what sells, what doesn't.
So, Colin, you kind of referenced this in your answer to that question, which brings up this idea of imposter syndrome and, how we all feel about our work and the process of writing and making things better. And am I good enough? Is what I'm writing good enough? Is it scary enough? I know that, when I was first writing scenarios several years ago, I was told by someone, you will never be published. And that ended up not being true, thankfully. I didn't take that to heart at the time. But it's one thing to be told that by a stranger or someone who maybe doesn't have your best interest at heart. It's another when it's inside your own head saying that. How, as storytellers, as writers, as keepers, especially to folks in the audience who might be thinking about writing a scenario for the first time, how do you handle that imposter syndrome?
Well, okay, not to get too deep in the weeds with like therapy stuff, but like I always, right, so like there's this adage that you can't control what happens in the world. You can just control how you react to it, right? Like if a tornado hits your house, that's terrible, but like what are you going to do in the aftermath of that? You couldn't have prevented that or done anything. In a lot of ways, I feel like our own internal emotions are like that. We have no control of when suddenly that voice inside your head is like, you're not good enough. But you can learn how to react to that voice. And you said, it's one thing when people who don't have your best interest at heart say that. Well, sometimes your own internal voice doesn't have your own best interests at heart. It just wants to be right or yell at you because that's what you've always done and that's what you know. Learn how to be like, screw you, voice inside my head. I'm going to do it anyway. And just get out there, Well,
That was good enough. I don't have anything to add to that. I like that. It's good.
I just repeat to myself, I am good enough, and God damn it, people like me, over and over. And then I just look at things that I've done, games that I've played where people have enjoyed playing with me. That's when I first started and I didn't have any author credit to look back on. Now I look back on things that I have written, things that I've done that people have enjoyed, and I constantly remind myself, people like this thing that you made. You can make another thing that people like. You might eventually write something nobody likes, but it is not this day. That's kind of my approach to things.
I try to keep myself fairly humble. I remember reading a quote somewhere about Dennis Potter, I think it was, that he got so big-headed he thought that everything that flowed from his pen was gold and that he could not do anything wrong. And no, there's some of his stuff I don't like. It's like dice rolls. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But focus on those good rolls, those where you got that extreme success. Like for me, I have certain memories that I will always hold on to. I've run scenarios at conventions where I've had a standing ovation from the players that they've enjoyed it so much they all stood up and clapped and they had an amazing time. And others where I've had, again, true story, a player came to me at one convention and said, unfortunately, time is marching on for me. This is almost certainly going to be my last convention before I pass away into the great beyond. I want you to run my last ever game. Because they loved what I'd done at previous conventions so much, and I really took that as a bit of an emotional gut punch, but in a kind of good way in that respect. And yeah, just remember the good stuff because that isn't going to go away. You have had successes. Sure, the dice are going to screw you at some point later down the line. Some ideas aren't going to work. Just roll with what you did well.
So I don't think that there's anything personally that I could add to that advice. And I think that's a wonderful way to kind of wrap up this section of our panel, which leaves the final piece. So in putting this panel together, someone had the genius big brain idea. It was Colin. Okay, I couldn't remember who it was. So Colin suggested, why don't we take a hook idea, solicit it from the good friends, and try to create something out of it without anybody but me, the moderator, knowing in advance. So the moment has come. We've got roughly 25 minutes left. I think it's enough time to try and pull something together, do our outros, and put maybe some of our own advice to work here. So the scenario hook that I'm throwing out to our Titans of Terror is, unfortunately, I don't know who to credit for this. Miranda reminded me of it. This was brought up at a previous Good Friends convention. So the Duolingo bird is an avatar of Hastur. When you're using the Duolingo app, you're not actually learning a new language. You're actually just translating the King in Yellow. Take it away.
I'm going to throw Colin right under the bus and say, right, what are you doing for audio-visual handouts for that, man? Because that's your bag.
Straight up. Thank you, Matt. That was actually the first thing that came to my mind. I had a bunch of images of the little owl and he's getting more twisted. And I'm like, it would be so easy to create like a fake Instagram page with terrible little owls on it or something. Like, boom. Simple handout. And then you can tell people to go and follow this page or whatever. And then they can get all the fun spooks from there.
It'd have to be like the yellow parakeet or something for copyright reasons.
Yeah.
Yellow parakeet.
He's got a pallid beak or something like that.
I don't know how many of you have tried using Duolingo, but I know it has those little like you have to add friends and it constantly yells at you to like poke your friends and all that. It's very annoying, but trying to think of a way to have the players be interacting with each other and not just everyone individually messing with the app. So maybe your yellow parakeet is forcing you all to undertake these annoying little challenges together.
Or you could be play testers at the company who are testing out these new like story paths or the new games that they want you to play. And so that's how you're brought together, is you're the playtesters. You work for this company, and you're learning all the new stuff before it gets launched for everybody else.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I
throwing
like
some
the
corporate horror on there.
Oh yeah. I like the idea then that they have what I like in a scenario is like from Jump Street they have a clear mission. Like the opening paragraph is like, you guys are this, do this. And then there's no futzing about. So that's like a perfect intro, I think, to this world.
I suppose the
Do
first thing
we
from go
Go ahead, Matt. Please, no, after you.
Sorry. The first thing from my end is I know the word Duolingo. Can someone explain to me what the hell it is? Because this would be where I start. Is research. I don't know what this bloody thing is.
It's a gamified learning app for languages. So you go through little practice lessons, and you try to rack up points and beat other people's high scores and your high score. And occasionally, if you wait too long to do it every day, the owl will pop up on and, and this green owl avatar will pop up and say, "You haven't done your practice yet," and things like that. So it doesn't work super well. Like it works as an app. It does not work for learning languages, but a lot of people use it.
Also very, very passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Extremely passive
Yeah.
aggressive.
Well, that brings up a good point. Did you guys hear? I know it was in the news that people were upset because the little icon, they keep changing it like with updates. And that one was
Mhm.
like, it's like terrifying melting away, where it
Yep.
was old owl and people got upset because it was so creepy.
Hmm.
So I mean, we could go with that too somehow, that the yellow, what do we call it? Yellow parakeet or whatever, is like terrifying images will flash on your phone. And maybe the as testers, the players have to go speak to the coders, and the coders like, we have no idea what the hell is causing this to happen, or something like
Well,
that.
yeah, one of the things Duolingo got in trouble for recently was announcing they were switching over to AI.
Hmm.
Like for 70% of their language force. And so you can glitches or strange things that happen are explained by, oh, it's just the AI hallucinating.
Hmm.
You can get some misdirect in there, and also some people not taking them seriously because, oh, you got a weird phrase here that's messing with your brain. Oh, that's just the AI.
Hmm.
We're
Just
back to
learn
reason.
it and move on, and you'll be fine. Just internalize whatever gibberish it's telling you to do, and just keep going through the levels. Don't
And
question.
one of the fun things with Duolingo that you can play with is the fact that you have the speaking exercises in certain languages, the more common ones like Spanish, French, and so on. And so you can get people to say these actual phrases. And for part of the handout thing, you could have actual audio recordings of the robot voice saying this phrase so that you know how to pronounce it.
Please repeat the following.
So somewhere between I'm getting the impression of a Mythos version of Clippy from
Yes.
old Office,
Yeah.
Pretty
that kind
close,
of
yeah.
level of interaction, and then to almost like a Babelfish kind of
Yeah.
translator, where it says "risen from the dead with Pepsi, not come alive with Pepsi." Yeah.
I'm just imagining Clippy being like, I see you're trying to summon an eldritch deity. Can I help with that? Oh.
I see you wear a mask. Do you wear a mask? No.
So question,
So,
are all corporate logos an avatar of Haster in this imaginary scenario?
ooh.
Is that the larger conspiracy that Duolingo is just one part of what's going on?
I
This
like him.
just
I
turned
like
into
the fact.
Delta Green.
I like the idea that a logo has some kind of metaphor behind it or some kind of
Mm.
explanation. Because in my real world job, I work for Mercedes Benz. And I remember when I first started with the company that we got, not say an introduction or indoctrination course, but we had a kind of here's a history of the company presentation that we got involved with. And that 3-point star in a circle has a significance. It represents the elements, so air, earth, water, etc., and then the world surrounding it. So having something that has an explanation as to what is behind a symbol, I think, is something that definitely
Mm.
has some weight there.
So in building this out into an actual like scenario, then
Mm.
what should the end goal of the
Mm.
the players be? Should it be to uncover the logo? Should it be to figure out if what's going on with like the AI? Should it like what should be our goal, I guess, that the players are gonna have to achieve or theoretically need to achieve, and along the way be exposed to horrifying terrors beyond imagination.
Mm.
One of the things that I remember, it's actually, as he's been mentioned a few times, Scott Dorward saying is that one of the most boring things is if you have a scenario where you are trying to stop the interesting thing happening. That is kind of a dull thing. It's like, oh, I want to see what happens when the Great Old One turns up and what they do when they stomp around the place, all Godzilla like. With Hasta in particular, or the King in Yellow, that one of the things that I really like about that part of the mythos is Carcosa. So if I'm playing a King Yellow game, I want the characters to go to Carcosa. So if they're being exposed to all this stuff through Duolingo, getting them to recite certain passages of the play, and that is twisting reality around them, warping them, that their own little story is being almost woven into the play itself, they might find themselves gradually getting that one or two steps
Mm.
closer to Carcosa. So the goal for them would be escape the play, break the narrative, and get back to the real world, because they are really in the midst of this trap at that point.
I like it.
Rather than stopping something interesting happen, no, get the hell out, because it's your head in the noose.
I like it.
Maybe
Is
I'd.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no, you go ahead first.
No, I was just going to ask, is it the type of thing where it becomes they come to a dawning realization that this app is being used by like millions of users worldwide, and that even if they try to get out, there's no saving the bulk of humanity kind of a situation? Like, do we want to go down that sort of a route or?
It could maybe be a fun ending reveal. Is that it's
Yeah,
even if they get out, it's already leaking out a bit.
yeah.
But I liked Rena's idea of like the players starting out just as play testers, sort of. Maybe they're in there just sitting in a room together, poking away at their phones. And as things slowly go crazy, yeah, they can talk to each other, maybe get out of the room and look around the rest of the corporate headquarters, which around them are slowly twisting into Carcosa.
Oh, I love
And
that.
maybe the sort of ending here is a twist on the AI ideas. Instead of just AI, it's like actually pulling people into itself. Like these playtesters, you're going to be sucked into Carcosa, and then you have to, or these playtesters and coders, and they're all being sucked into it. And then their thoughts are being transformed and then sent out through the app to the wider world as an ending reveal. But sort of the actual players, as you're playing, is looking around this corporate headquarters and the app, and slowly realizing that this isn't just an office building.
I love that idea because we could start with like them just spitballing here. They're in the room, their manager, whatever, tells them, do this, look at the app this way, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to come check on you in an hour or 2 hours, whatever it is. And then as they're doing the thing and we get to introduce have we decided it's the parrot in yellow or whatever the hell we're going to call this thing?
Yellow parakeet.
Yellow parrot, right? Yellow parrot. As they're playing around with that and they get it out, an hour past, 2 hours, nobody comes to get them. And when they go out, yeah, I love that. I love that concept, Michael, that maybe it's a normal office building until there's nobody around. They start opening doors and you can see what is the Lake of Hali doing there or something like that. And yeah, because you know me, I like that liminal space craziness. So yeah, that sounds great.
Sure, that was a cleaning closet yesterday.
Yeah, I don't remember a lake being in there.
The break room in the lake is just the lake in the break room is just that's new. Swimming pool, that's a nice perk. That's a good benefit.
Boy, this is
I
some
love working
real
for
like
Duolingo.
this is some real early 2000s Google shit they put in the building.
So we have a question from the audience, which is, we we now know that the investigators are coders or playtesters for the
Mhm.
app, right? But what is the opening salvo that
Mhm.
all of the investigators realize, oh, there's something strange going on with the app?
I would have them like have something weird, like massively weird, strange, like hit them right out of the gate to kind of link them all together, but also they've got this shared experience of something they've just had, but they're not allowed to leave yet. Because they've still got their job to do. And well, maybe they're just tired and overworked because they're working for a tech company and so on, but you hit them with something quick out of the gate, so maybe they have a shared hallucination because someone did the little vocal bit on the app. They were testing something out, and strange words were happening. And they get a hallucination of it, or the words that they were saying are part of a ritual, and it messes with their minds. It's not the full ritual, but there's bits of it happening there, and they all have this shared experience to keep them together. That's something that I would do.
I
Congrats,
like
you got the new
linking
high
them all
score.
together.
Reality just broke a bit.
Hmm.
Well, I like the idea we talked before about how the Duolingo owl is super passive aggressive. And like, I would love the idea if after a little bit of time, maybe their phone
Mm.
is constantly saying, hey, you should do, but then maybe they walk down a hallway and there's the yellow parrot in like real life that's like, you haven't gone into the app yet, or something and it starts in real life appearing to them and being passive aggressive is all hell to them. I don't know.
It's kind
Maybe
of a.
becoming a. Gone.
Oh, please go, Matt. No.
Maybe pulling in over time after it happens, like the third or fourth time, pulling in certain things like, you haven't got on your dancing shoes today. You know the ball is tonight. Or lines like that.
Yeah, yeah. I love
I
that.
was just going to say that you could use the stupid bird on the phone as the like your bangs or your the thing pushing people forward. If you ever need the players to move forward or change something, then the dumb bird can say something, or
Yeah.
it's constantly nattering on, but its words can twist reality, sort of thing.
Well, Michael, you said earlier you like to pick a ticking clock, and I think
Hmm.
for maybe a short scenario, to combine what you and Matt said, it might be great if the bird will be like, you need your dancing shoes. The ball is in 3 hours, and then that can
Mm.
like decrease, and they're like, we've got to get the hell out of here in 3 hours. Um,
Yeah, I like that. It's great.
So they're coders. They're asked by their boss to look at the app. They're in the room, and then like Rena said, something crazy is going to happen right out the gate. Like, are we thinking a big crazy or just like a little? Are we looking for a feeling of creeping, increasing dread? Or are we looking for like boom right out the gate, survival horror? You've got to get the hell out of here. Like, what kind of vibe are we going for at the table?
I would go with something big to shake them up and then tone it back down, like pull it back. So like again, they're tired. They're overhyped on caffeine and Red Bull, and like maybe things are just weird. It's fine. They can explain it away, and we've got work to do. Their manager won't let them out of the room. Like they're locked in the testing room kind of thing. They have to keep going. And then slowly ramp it back up again from there, but give them that first big scare to really
Yeah,
set the something is happening, something is wrong, and bond them together as a group. Um, and then go from there. But I wouldn't keep it high octane the whole way through.
gotcha,
Not for
gotcha.
this type of scenario, and not for the King in Yellow.
That's a good call. What do we think that big scare is going to be?
Mm. Mm.
Is it going to be something within the app, or is it going to be something in real, like physically around them, sort
Mhm.
of a thing, or like what?
Mhm.
Maybe it starts in the app and then, they've just spent like the Tetris effect, right? You spent so much
Mm,
time looking at Tetris that when you look away, you still see the blocks moving. You've spent so much time coding this app that when you look away, you see the little owl in your peripheral vision, right? Except
Yeah.
it's actually your boss telling you that you need to take your mandatory break, or more likely telling you you don't get to take that break today. You've got to keep coding. So it starts in the app, but it kind of starts to meld into the real world, just as we said, that kind of switch from the corporate headquarters to Carcosa as the primary setting.
Does maybe their boss come to check on them after an hour, but it has like the head of the yellow parrot.
And
Everybody
it's very
sees, but
passive
the
aggressive.
yeah, but the boss doesn't like if they're like, why do you have a parrot head? They're like, what are you talking about, or something, but all of our players see it and get freaked out. I think I don't know. What do y'all think of that?
Yeah.
I've got no problem with the bird being the bad guy here, or any kind of bird symbology. Given I've got 10 parrots downstairs, so yeah, there's plenty of inspiration I can draw from what the antics my poor little feathered friends get up to.
So,
So,
okay, go ahead, VJ.
oh,
Sorry.
no, you go. You go, Colin.
Oh, no, I was just saying, so, okay, they're in the room, they're doing their thing. Bam, big scare happens. The boss is a bird. Holy shit. They're like, what's going on? I would say then that would be like act one or scene one. And then scene two is we've got to go, like, we're going to open the door. Nobody's come for us. I would think that's exploring the office space. Are you guys feeling that or?
There is nothing. No.
Sorry, no, Matt, you take it.
I was just going to throw in the one line of there's nothing more horrifying than being in a very large office complex after dark,
Yeah.
with all those light sensitive areas that the lights will turn off after a while. But if you start moving around, they'll turn back on again, and just having all those areas just slowly fade out into the black. I've been there before, and yeah, it's a bit creepy.
Let's do that then. That sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe just the whole middle section, or even all of the scenario, basically, just be wandering about the offices as increasingly weird and awful things happen. Because, as Matt said, offices are already a nightmare. So,
and when those lights flash back on, all of your co-workers are sat there dressed for a masquerade ball, wearing the pallid mask, just staring at you. Lights go off, they come back on, they're not there. Plenty of all that kind of jump
Yeah.
scare moment you can throw in and just freak them out.
Could we almost make a mini sandbox of like a bunch of random effects that they can find that the GM can like salt and pepper to taste of like little spooks and strangeness?
Yeah.
Great.
making for a convention sort of time block so you can add as many or as little spooky bits as possible.
How
Enough
about
to-
how about it for investigation? Maybe certain computers work and others don't, and the ones that do are flashing like weird Hester code on them or something. I don't know.
No,
Leaning
I love
into
it.
your audio-visual love here, so yes, go for it.
Yes, Colin, you may make that. That's by all
Oh,
means.
thank you.
So, oh, go ahead, Michael.
Oh no, I was probably gonna say what you were about to say anyway, so you go ahead. I think.
So we've kind of talked about some of the meat on the bones of the structure. One of my favorite things about Call of Cthulhu scenarios in particular is that sometimes the ending is almost mundane for what happens to the investigators. So let's say you escape Carcosa. Most of your investigators have escaped Carcosa and have returned back to the office. What happens? You've been forever changed. You've journeyed to Carcosa. You've met the King in Yellow. You've heard the sacred text, the play. Do you just have to go about your day? Um, do you lose your job? Is that the effect that happens to the players? What does that ending look like? Is it bombastic or is it, just kind of leaning more into corporate horror? The drudgery will continue.
I like the contrast of you have this really like quote unquote fantastical thing happening with the journey to Carcosa and experiencing the play and the King in Yellow and all that, and then you come back to drudgery. Like I like that kind of it's an escape, but not a real escape because of the horrible things that happen. But then you come back and it's just real world monotony. Like I love the idea of that contrast.
I like
So
then you could have scenes where the players are on a bus and they're looking like, oh, I still have to go to work, and they're looking around and everybody's on the Yellow Parrot app or something like that that just will sink in that like, yeah, you've escaped, but for how long or you know.
to draw upon one of the wells of inspiration for me is I love The Prisoner, the
Mhm.
1960s TV series. Uh, yeah, you escaped Carcosa, but you haven't escaped the village. That wherever you
Mhm.
go, you are still there, and
Yeah.
you just it's now that you're enlightened enough to be able to see exactly the fact that this prison is still around you.
Mhm.
And you're
All
still
this.
really bad at German or French or
Yes.
Japanese or whatever language you were trying to learn. You still haven't gotten the hang of it. So I will say we're a few minutes past our time. So if anybody wants to add any other little pieces, we'll go once more around the table to add pieces to our Duolingo, the parrot in yellow scenario, and then we will do our outros and wrap this panel for the day.
I'm just glad I never learned to speak a foreign language. Done.
I think there would be room for adding new features to the app. Like you could have, for example, listening to a song in the language that you're trying to learn, and there's things in there like concepts or words that seep into your consciousness from the texts or whatever, because Duolingo does do stuff like that. You have mini podcasts now on there that you can use. So it'd be listening to the music or something along those lines, and that's part of what you're playtesting. And you can do different ways of adding in the horror and uh the elements of learning about Carcosa from there.
Sounds like Colin's going looking for a composer now for the audio part of this.
You know me, Matt. I appreciate that.
Um, just to add on maybe to a bit at the end is if your players are all wanting to be the big damn heroes at the end and they come out either in Carcosa or in the office, they want to like smash the computers or the central processing thing, but they do that. But all their coworkers and all the users of the app are like, what did you just do? You idiots. We were using that. And so they come out of that like they have this social awkward part where everyone just stares at them like, well, now we have to go and build it again.
And they get sued for millions of dollars for destruction of property.
Exactly. They look like crazy people in the end. It's
I
You
dig
could
it.
always
nothing
run
comes of
back
it.
to you could run back to Carcosa to avoid all the legal problems.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, if the King in Yellow play is all like encompassing of reality, isn't like destruction of property law and tax law included within the play somewhere in the main? I don't know.
The
I
worst
would
part,
say
you're just playing along.
I would say for me, I like little mini games and stuff in my uh scenarios. So I think it would be really fun if at the end when you go before the parrot in yellow in Carcosa, who's on his little perch, like eating a bunch of seeds, which are human skulls or whatever. I don't know. Maybe you have to use some of the words that you learned earlier to actually like escape or something. Maybe I'll ask you questions and the answers were part of the app, and I'll be like, "Were you paying attention?" Something like that. I don't know. It would be fun.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So, thank you all so much for joining us for this panel about transforming a hook into a scenario. Hopefully, you got both practical advice from some of the best writers and keepers out there, our masters of horror, our titans of terror, and also maybe there's a playtest for the parakeet in yellow at some point. Who knows? But thank you all so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to be your moderator. I'm VJ Stonecraft. I'm the executive director of a history museum and a TTRPG writer and AP performer. I'm also a contributing writer for Cthulhu by Gaslight 7E. Please check it out wherever Cthulhu by Gaslight 7E is sold. You can find me on Discord and Blue Sky. Follow me into the dark there, and I will let our panelists tell you where you can find them, their projects, and feel free to gloriously shill the projects that you're working on.
Been Rina Haenze. My pronouns are they, them. I am the head of Mythos Horror on the Old Ways podcast, where I run Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Dark, and I'm currently running a Trail of Cthulhu campaign called Silver Screams, 1930s Hollywood. You can also find me on Ain't Slayed Nobody, the Down Darker Trails campaign as Patience Cartwright the Gunslinger, and a bunch of other mini things. I also pop up occasionally on places like How We Roll, Miskatonic Playhouse, and Symphony Entertainment, Technical Difficulties, and a few other places as well. And you can find my scenarios on DriveThru RPG, including the gold bestseller Saturday the 14th. Today is the perfect day to pick up such a scenario. And you can also peruse my other work there. One thing I do want to plug is that on the Old Ways Podcast Twitch, next Friday at 7 p.m. Central, we will be doing a Cthulhu Dark live stream with a new scenario that I have written. It has never been shown anywhere else, and we will be doing the stream to benefit Trans Lifeline. So it's a charity stream. If you'd like to contribute to that, come and watch us have some horrible things happen and benefit a good cause with some horror for hope.
Awesome. Yeah. And also I have to add on, I'm very proud of all of us for never once mentioning Rina's lovely costuming here.
What costume?
Yeah, what costume? Oh, no one else sees it. Oh God. All right. Yeah, I've been and continue to be Michael Reid. You can find some of my Call of Cthulhu stuff on DriveThru RPG. To search Michael Reid and ignore the other person that's also Michael Reid, but not this Michael Reid. You can find some of my reviews and other scribblings and stuff on mjrrpg.com, or just search that on all the various social things that I very, very, very occasionally use.
I'm Colin Richards, artist, author, other stuff, I guess. You can find gallery of my work, colinrichardsart.com, which is woefully out of date. I got to update that. You can find my TTRPG, my couple Call of Cthulhu scenarios on DriveThru RPG. Just look up Signal of Noise or Omega Kappa Die. I'm on the Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Discord, under Colin Richards Art or Mystic_Colin. Don't be a stranger. Come say hi. I also do some AP stuff on Into the Darkness and RPG Reanimators. So check me out there. Don't be a stranger. Come say hi.
And I've been Matt Sanderson. You'll find my work in various game stores or websites direct from publishers, either Chaosium or Helmgast. I think the next thing that's coming out for me is probably from the recent Cult Kickstarter, that I have a horror starter in the Broken Reflections collection, set in the wonderful world of Purgatory. So just when you've killed off your character and thought you could escape the game, no, it's just starting. Otherwise, I'm over on Discord, over in the Good Friends of Jackson Elias server, or likewise with Colin over at Into the Darkness. You can find me on YouTube there as well. Otherwise, at blasphemoustomes.com for the Good Friends of Jackson Elias. But otherwise, yeah, be seeing you.
Thank you all so much for joining me. This was so much fun to run this panel and so lucky to have you all. For those watching and listening, thank you for joining us for a weekend with good friends, and we will see you around for more horror, terror, and dice rolling. Bye.